So our next speaker is Oyaia, and he's going to talk about the LIBSENSE initiative, which CORE has also been participating in. Welcome, Omo.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm also going to sort of, touch on the topic, so it's not entirely out of topic, but modernizing repositories. But what's come through in my experience with CORE and in trying to sort of cutting onto this topic is the essence of community. So this is a picture of the first time I actually met Kathleen in the flesh. It was in Zanzibar, and if you look carefully, it's not a great picture, but if you look carefully, you would see that Irina is also there. So this was part of a project. Do I have a clicker somewhere? So LIBSENSE, I think LIBSENSE embodies what we're doing in Africa and speaks to this topic the most. So that's, I think I'm going to sort of run you through. I don't think everybody here is very familiar with LIBSENSE. So LIBSENSE started out as an acronym, Library Support for Embedded NREN Services and E-Infrastructures. So maybe I should introduce myself properly. I'm not a typical repository person. So my space is the research networks. So I work as Chief Strategy Officer for the West and Central African Research Network. It's a regional network interconnecting national networks in West and Central Africa. So before that, I was Chief Technology Officer, so most of my background is really technical. So LIBSENSE came out of a project that we're involved in, or we've been involved in for 10 years, the Africa Connect 3 project. Now, the Africa Connect 3 project is connecting national networks across Africa. And in over the last 10 years, we've managed to connect 22 out of the 38 countries. There are 3 partners in the project. My organization covering West Africa, the Ubuntu Alliance, which covers South and East Africa, and ASREN, which covers North Africa and some Arab countries. So we partner with GIANT. GIANT is the European network that interconnects similar countries in Europe. So the Africa Connect 3 project is a partnership between the European Commission and the African partners, jointly funded. So along the line, we sort of realized that the networks we're building needed to have these applications and content. And so we started to look at connecting with the experts. That's how we got connected with CORE and IFO to see how we could deal with this. And at the same time, we had also identified that librarians were very key to this whole idea. So we had started to look at, that area. It was our first connection with the community as such. And so we also realized that we needed, there was some information management capabilities that needed to be sort of strengthened. So then, to cut a long story short, LIBSENSE was born out of that. And today it is much more than this, but it's a library at its heart. It's a library NREN collaboration. And the goals are promote the cultural change we've all been talking about. That's an evolving target. It keeps on changing, but that's a key part of that. Leverage the research networks to provide the technical support to deal with some of the issues that we've realized are evident in modernizing repositories, and generally build capacity. So that's just a little diagram to show how we've evolved. Along with IFL and CORE, there is the University of Sheffield. The information school in the University of Sheffield is a core partner in, we call them core partners on the core foundational team because they've helped develop the ideas, and they keep on sort of infusing current thinking to sort of help us stay contemporary. So we've got regional networks. We involve in the NREN activities that are typical, connectivity and so forth. We have library consortia across Africa that are partners in LIBSENSE and other partners. So the referencia, who we have a project with, Open Air through Irina, and Actually, that's how we started, and some other collaborators. So I'm sure, and I have been talking to a few people here, and I'm sure some more things will emerge. The discussions that are going on with CSSD are quite promising. And as you know, my region is, we have 22 countries in my region, 17 of them are French speaking. So a bit of how LIBSENSE is organized. So that our primary focus is building these communities of practice. We think once people are talking and working together, then we can actually start to do things. So our strategy is both bottoms up and top down. And the focus is on strengthening local and national services. And we work in 3 different languages. So we have working groups in French, English, and Arabic. We also, this is where we haven't done very much, but we have an interest in promoting efforts in indigenous and traditional knowledge. So within those groups, we work transversely. So we have 3 pillars in which we work. So it's one's policy, infrastructure, and capacity building. So that's like, that's the foundation of our work. And then we work across the institutional, national, regional, and continental levels. So I thought it would be easiest within the time I have to sort of describe some of the things we do at the different levels to give you a sense of how we're structured. So at the continental level, we are looking at how we get some coherence between the different countries and the regional organizations that create that level. So we have like an open science statement and how we would like to see open science roll out across Africa. We are looking at regional platforms where you have regional organizations that represent the continent, looking at platforms, how we sort of come together to support that infrastructurally and with policy. So there's some examples. I talked about the statement that we put out as part of the UNESCO Open Science Partnerships that has evolved into collaboration with UNESCO in regional development policy workshops. I'll talk about that in the next slide. We are working with Roof Forum. Roof Forum is a network of about 140 universities, agricultural universities. So we're working with them to provide a continental platform for agricultural data. We have built, these are identity federations. Some of you will be familiar with EduGain, but we have built a identity federation called EduID.Africa that has the countries providing their own federations where they exist or using a catch-all that were built for all the other users to access infrastructure. At the regional level, we're doing similar stuff, trying to align, get associations of regional higher education, so leaders of higher education, associations of universities in the region, bringing them together to try to harmonize the thinking around infrastructures, policy, and open science in general. Same thing I mentioned, what we're trying to do with infrastructure. So which at each level, what we're trying to do with those 3 pillars, policy, capacity building, and infrastructure, is find contextual ways of dealing with that. So at this level, we have mostly capacity building workshops. The harvester we have with La Referencia comes in here. So that is really for Arabic content. So the partner that is really interfacing with La Referencia at the moment is ASREN. And then we have a program we have developed for early career research and training. At national level, which is at this is where I speak a little bit more to what we're doing here. What's really key that we're doing here is building out our shared open access repository and publishing platforms. So in terms of modernizing the networks in Africa, we see shared platforms as the way to do that most speedily. So the basic idea is to leverage the challenges we have. I'm not going to go over that again. Everybody seems to have the challenges. We just have them to a higher degree, So it's so getting started. or trying to do other things, for me, seems to be a waste of time. We have had some work with DSpace. DSpace is the most popular platform that's used, software that's used. It has the same challenges, outdated, some as old as version 4. So you know how far back some of them are. And we did, with Irina's help, get involved with the DSpace program to try and work at that. I think that would take a lot of time, too much time. So what we are doing instead is driving, using the policy activity to drive an agenda for shared platforms. And the idea is that if the research networks provide the infrastructure, then everybody can use it and it solves some of these problems. We can use the human networks. We can connect the human networks to communities like CORE, and so we stay afresh. So that's what we're doing. We have a project started now, and in those countries, with Benin, Burkina Faso, Cote d'Ivoire, Nigeria, and Uganda, where we have pilots for these shared platforms. What we also do within the context of LIBSENSE, one of the policy actions, is what we call in the open science roadmaps. So what happens in this case is, you have stakeholders in a country come together towards defining an open science action plan. What we have learned is that the very action starts to focus the thinking about the community working at something. So I fully take the point you made. It doesn't only work with repositories, it works at all levels. Once there's a common task, even between organizations that would ordinarily be competitive, once there is that common task that they have a stake in, then it promotes activity. At the institutional level is mostly policy development on campus. We're also trying to promote a leadership program by connecting, because we now have the regional, the Association of Vice Chancellors, we are able to sort of get within campus, take that, at that level, to get research administrators and managers connected to the process and more conversation around there, and sort of adopting best practices for open science. So this is where I actually talk to the topic. And this is a little messy schematic, but I'll walk you through it. So the idea here is what I just described. Repositories should be shared. It should be run infrastructure. We should sort of abstract the librarians from everything that's been discussed. Software, what software they use, how they update it, how they adopt, whatever it is. Identifiers, some new notifications. Right, okay, I'm back. So first of all, I would say this model basically is just slightly extended from the JP Core model from NIE. So Kazu, if Kazu is online, big one to Kazu there. So we learned again through Core. So Core has been very instructive in how we've sort of developed, our actions. So I met with Kazu, and in connecting with Kazu, I realized that there's a lot of, we were thinking things already. We had already sort of established a collaboration and some sort of terms of reference for the collaboration between the NRENs and the libraries. But we hadn't I knew that within those terms of reference, the NREN would support infrastructure and so on and so forth. but we hadn't really developed that fully until I met Kazu. So in Japan, the NREN provides infrastructure called do you know that's just got on my head? Gyro cloud. I beg your pardon. Gyro cloud. And Gyro cloud is this infrastructure based out of Onivino that feeds the entire community. And there was this, and if you've seen Kaz's presentation, you can see where he starts with, just a few institutions in that system, but as a system provides more than the other institutionally host repositories, there's a migration to the system. And I think that's going to happen in Africa as well, much faster than in Japan even. So the only difference here is that I'm a regional network trying to support national networks, which in some cases have the capacity to do this themselves, but in most cases not. So I'm going to replace Kazu. So if you start from Wakren, so make me central to that, even although the diagram is not, we're going to develop, or we are developing, repository infrastructure, with Kazu's team as a primary support, but we're also part of the Invenio RDM development team. So we are sort of getting inputs from there, or working directly with NI in developing this. So the idea is that at that level of the repository infrastructure, we will provide that and manage it. We would also support what I am calling CC, actually, for those that is a country code. So what I expect to happen is that there's already a LIBSENSE community in most of these countries we're working with. We'll formalize that and continue to strengthen it as a country core. So they would have, from the start, with this platform, a community that is this is also fashioned after JP Core, a little community that becomes the network of repository managers for a start. And then when they all have the networks, the repository of networks, we'll have projects as required. And that will be a library NREN construct that actually supports the repository service. Now, when the REN is mature enough in the country, they will also operate the infrastructure. When they are not, then WACREN will operate the infrastructure. So IFUL, especially through IRENA, have done humongous amount of work in Africa. I can say that most of our connections with the library community have come through, mostly through IFUL, and LIBSENSE, and that community has grown, sort of leveraging some of the work that they have done. So we see IFUL and other, sort of supporting that core CC core community and directly providing capacity. So the bit that I say community, that I call the community, will be the repository managers and all of those connected with actually building repositories. So I see CC core doing pretty much what we're doing here. So looking at, commonalities, schemas, how you grow the network and the things to do. And I see in the community space, university administrators who would have this other level as a supra level that actually represents their interests. So I think it should be clear enough now, hopefully. So the idea, again, even from a research network, because not to say our research networks have loads of cash, will be to optimize resource utilization as much as possible. So in the current pilot, this is the kind of thing that will happen. We have Kubernetes clusters that we would design to, because we were trying to anticipate how the countries will evolve. So the system from scratch will be designed in such a way that we can have a distributed structure where if the country, and some of the countries are already making such noises, or we want to have our data in our country, we're able to run the system with clusters, distributed clusters that are connected to each other, but in the different countries as the case may be. And things that are easy to share, we will share. So ultimately, we see a structure like this. So there's Wakren running the base infrastructure that has the clusters. The research network from the get-go would run certain things. The identity providers for the community will do some monitoring and backup. And those open access repositories, be they national, as in one repository that they all share, or groups of repositories on the same platform, will exist at that level. So one of the things we've also done, and I know this is connected because we're also taking a leaf out of the Latin American book, is started discussions on research assessment reform. Now, the reason why we're sort of keen on this is because we see it as a way to drive the usage of these repositories once they run it. Same issues on campus where leadership doesn't really connect to the idea of repositories. I found Isabella's Sci-Hub really funny. I'm sure you will have much funnier cases if I was connected enough. So essentially, we want to understand what this is in an African context, what research assessment reforms in an African context. We're following the discussions in Glasgow and FOLEC. We're having conversations with them. But from my point of view, it is principally for the leadership to understand some of the challenges that Bjorn was talking about yesterday and respond to them so they can promote the repositories, because that's an obvious response to that issue. So as part of that, we have these regional policy development workshops. This was the one, I just came from Abidjan a couple of weeks ago. We had a Wakren conference, and within that conference, we ran the second workshop. Now, this is a collaboration with UNESCO to sort of implement the UNESCO Open Science recommendations at campus level. We think that's where it actually will make the most impact. And if that doesn't work at that level, then it will remain recommendations. So in this meeting, we brought 3 regional organizations that represent universities, and they had directors of research from about 13 countries discussing the same issue about what do we need, what's the issue now, what is the context, what do we need to do? So you see, but now what is good about these conversations happen. But what's good about these conversations is that they can connect with the infrastructure. So when they're sort of thinking about policy, they know they can enable those policies. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Omo. And I just have to say, since I met you, Omo, you have accomplished so much in the African context. And it's just amazing to watch how much progress you've made. So it's great to see. Are there any questions for Omo? Lautaro?
It's a comment and a question, more a comment that for us it's very interesting, the idea of the shared repository service, because we are been discussing that this also as a solution for the problem that we are facing in Latin America. It's not easy for us to move from one model to another, but it's for us of the great interest what you guys are doing, and we need to keep in touch and see and learn from you, because as you know, Red Clara is part of our of La Referencia council, and I think that we can work in trying to work in and learn from you and try to bring that experience that you are doing. of a shared infrastructure to Latin America. Maybe it's one possible solution for some of our countries. So congratulations for that model, and we will keep.
I guess some people didn't hear you, so I'm just going to say that that Lautaro was saying that they're investigating a shared infrastructure model in the context of Latin America. It's of course much harder when you start with many distributed repositories to move there, but he's just suggesting they keep in touch with each other. Any other comments for Omo? Questions? If not, thank you very much, Omo.